At what age is Social Security no longer taxed?
It's taxed. It can be taxed as long as you live. So if you live 100, they'll still tax you at age 100 if it fits within the parameters of taxation.
What about investments? Because this person asked, like, they have investments, but they're bored, want to still go back to work. Does their investments count towards that Social Security earnings limit?
No, the investments don't. It's just earned income, which you go to work, someone pays you, you get a W-2, or if you're self-employed, it could be your net earnings. Heck, if you're lucky and you go down to the casino and win a boatload of money, none of that counts towards the earnings test. So congratulations on that if you do, but it won't affect your Social Security benefit.
Backed by popular demand, I have Mr. Jim Blair with Premier Social Security Consulting back with us today to do part 2 of answering some Social Security questions, some popular and common Social Security questions, because the first video we did about 3 months back already almost has 75,000 views. So Jim Blair, welcome back to the Agape podcast.
Thanks. It's good to be back. And Social Security is definitely a popular topic. I wasn't sure it was that popular, but it's good to hear. It affects everybody at some point or another. So I'm glad there's interest.
Absolutely. And I know that you're going to share more value and some of your expertise with us. But we were talking off camera about some recent changes and just kind of some quick things that we needed to recap and mention. Let's start there. Can you tell our audience what those things are?
Sure. Well, the first thing we were talking about was the online account. You go to ssa.gov, G-O-V, and you create an online account. That way you can look at your benefits statement. They used to mail it to everybody. It's been many years since they have, sure. And they don't mail it to you until you're age 60, but you need to be looking at it well before then. So I encourage everybody, go to the Social Security website. There's over 70 million people that have created an online account. So even people like me who sometimes struggle with my computer, I was able to create an online account. So I think everybody should be able to. But it's important to have, even whether you're drawing benefits or not. If you're drawing benefits, there's other reasons. You can change your address, your bank information, get information about your account. But if you haven't filed, then you can get an idea of what your benefits are going to be when you get ready to apply for benefits. And that's a great planning tool. Yeah, people need to know what they're going to receive in retirement. That's a great tool to have there. So I encourage everybody to do that.
Yeah, and the other thing you were saying is that they're no longer being able to just walk into an office and schedule an appointment. Is that correct?
Right. They made some recent changes. It's supposed to be effective the first of the year, but offices have already started doing it. No matter what the purpose is for your visit to the local Social Security office, you need to call the 800 number, make an appointment. And so don't just walk in because they're going to tell you, go home and make an appointment. So you're just kind of wasting some of your time. Call the national 800 number, 800-772-1213. That's the Social Security national phone number. And you can make an appointment, and then you can either go in or they'll call you. So a lot of things can be done over the phone. But that's definitely a change from when I worked there.
Right, absolutely. And I've seen that, dealing with Medicare and then dealing with Social Security, I'm seeing a lot more people when they go to apply for their benefits. Like you said, the rule may not start to the beginning of the year, but I have one gentleman that I guess went last month, this month, and he can even get an appointment set till like December the 7th. So what if somebody says, hey, I know I'm going to retire, I know I'm going to go on Social Security in this, let's just say January, how far ahead do they need to go ahead and start making that phone call to get that set up for that appointment?
Well, you can file up to 4 months in advance. You don't need to necessarily do it that far in advance, but that does give Social Security plenty of time to get any issues resolved and get your account set up. But at least 60 days in advance of when you want benefits to begin. One thing people need to remember, whatever month you choose to start your benefits, say, for example, you decide you want benefits to start in January, the benefits are always paid a month behind. You won't get your first check until February.
Okay.
So if someone filed in November for benefits to begin in January, that's plenty of time.
Okay.
You do if you didn't plan ahead and you wanted benefits to begin earlier than that, as long as you file within the month you want benefits to begin,
Right.
you're fine. You just might get your first check a little late.
Okay. Before, because I have a list of questions, because our first video that we did, a sit down, was so popular. Like I said in the very beginning, people were asking all these questions, and it just kind of like a runaway freight train. It just, I couldn't catch up to all of them. But before I ask those, some specific questions, and then some things that you kind of had that you wanted to bring up as well. Any other quick updates that we need to mention right out of the gate?
If there's anybody out there that is a public employee where they worked in a job where you didn't pay Social Security tax, the House passed a law. It's the Social Security Fairness Act. A lot of talk about that. It's going to do away with the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. It's really hard to tell if the Senate's even going to take it up. So this is the furthest it's ever gone, and there is a possibility that can happen. But people shouldn't get too excited yet because it still has to pass the Senate, and the president would still have to sign it. But we'll have to wait and see. And if you have something you want to say about it, call your senator and let them know.
Right. Now, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up. And by the way, if you are watching this but you didn't watch part one, we will have the video link in the video description below, and you can go click on that. And Jim and I are tackling questions like, what's the best time or the best age, I should say, to file your Social Security? Is that 62? Is that 65? Is that your full retirement age 70? And more. So you definitely want to go take a watch of that, and because there's tons of value that Jim is providing. So let me talk about this real quickly, Jim, because this is a question that I have, and I'm just going to read it straight from the sheet here that I have that the people have asked. It says, when a husband dies, does the wife keep hers and hers, or does the wife keep hers, or her spouse's Social Security? Is this the same rule for if a husband dies? In other words, vice versa?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The rules for survivor benefits doesn't matter if it's the husband or the wife that dies, and who's left to draw the benefits. Basically, what will happen is if you're the lower earner and the higher earner passes away, your benefit will increase to equal the higher earner's benefit amount. So you don't draw both checks. You don't draw yours and theirs. You draw theirs if it was higher. Now, if you haven't filed for benefits yet, you do have some options where you can take a lower benefit in the beginning. Say you take a widow's or widower's benefit at age 60. That's the earliest you can file for those benefits. You could take your own if it's higher at 62, or even wait all the way to age 70. If yours is a lower benefit, you could take your own at 62. It's reduced for age. But then at full retirement age, you switch over to the survivor benefit and you get the full benefit at that point. So if you're not receiving benefits, you have some options. If you've already applied and you're getting a Social Security benefit, they'll just increase yours to what the deceased individual's benefit was.
Okay, so to make it real simple, if we're both getting benefits, so to speak, and my wife's was $2,000 in benefits and mine was $1,600, right? And she passes away, I would get her $2,000.
Right.
Okay.
Right. They would increase your benefit $400 to take you from $1,600 to $2,000.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because once again, in the Medicare space, I hear it all the time that people think when this happens, they get both checks, and so they get a little excited, and then you kind of have to give them the bearer of bad news a little bit and tell them they can't get both checks.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue for some folks.
Right. And so the second question I have, and once again, I'm just reading these straight from the first video. It says, can an ex-wife collect her ex-husband's Social Security? And in parentheses, it says, what is the 10-year rule?
So there are benefits for ex-spouses.
Okay.
And the 10-year rule says to be eligible off of your ex-spouse, you had to be married to them for 10 years or more.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be 10 happy years, just 10 years.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. So you had to be married to your ex for 10 years or more. You're age 62. You have to be single. You can't be married and draw off of your ex-spouse.
Oh, okay.
Now, it doesn't matter their marital status, but you must be single to draw off of their work record. And if you've been divorced for less than 2 years, you can't draw off of their record unless they have filed for their own retirement or maybe a disability benefit. The
Okay.
rules change a little bit if you've been divorced for 2 years or more. Now, you still have to meet the 10-year rule. You still have to be single, but now both you and your ex-spouse have to be age 62 or older, and then you can file off of your ex-spouse's work record, even if they haven't applied yet. So maybe you're both age 62, your ex is planning on waiting till age 70 to take their benefit. You could go ahead and file off of their work record. And a couple of the questions we get along that same line: will it affect your ex's benefit if you take off of their work record? No, it will not affect your benefit. It won't affect your current spouse's benefit either. So the ex-spouse can draw completely separate from your own and from anyone else on your work record.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very popular one. I know even in, all my years in Medicare, that's a very popular question that comes up, especially if that person, like you said, hasn't remarried, right?
Right.
And they're wanting to know that. Let me ask you this. Can you lose, this is another question here, can you lose your Social Security? If so, how?
Well, you're not going to lose your own Social Security.
Okay.
The only way to do that is to be basically kicked out of the United States and you lose your citizenship. So hopefully that doesn't happen to anybody.
Hopefully not.
So it's pretty extreme, but you're not going to lose your Social Security benefit. Now, other benefits you could. We just talked about divorced spouse benefits.
Right.
If you're receiving a divorced spouse benefit and you remarry, you will lose that divorced spouse benefit. But you could become eligible on your new spouse's work record. If you remarry before age 60, that eliminates your ability to draw off of a deceased spouse until as long as you're married. Now, if that marriage ends, your eligibility begins again. So it's not a permanent disqualification, but while you're married, it is. Oddly enough, though, with survivor benefits, if someone remarries after age 60, you can still draw off of your deceased spouse or deceased ex-spouse's work record.
Okay. Now, that's interesting. And let me stop right here. Like, just a little bit, this is a lot of information. I get this all the time with Medicare as well. How do you keep up with all this? Obviously, you're the expert, and you were a district manager, I believe, with the Social Security Administration, if I remember correctly, and you did that for a long time. But like somebody who's just watching this today, they're going, Jim and Rob, I'm hearing what you're talking about. Thanks so much for giving us some good information. But what do I need to do? Like, if I have all these questions, do I just call into Social Security like we talked about earlier? They set up the interview and then I can ask as many questions as I want?
Well, to a certain degree, they're not going to stay on the phone all day with you, but they will tell you what benefits you are eligible for, and they'll let you know what those benefits would be. To find out what I'd be eligible off of my ex-spouse, I'm going to have to show Social Security we were married 10 years or more. Usually a divorce decree will suffice, because most of them will show your date of marriage. You'll see the date of divorce, and you can pick up the time frame from that. If it doesn't, you need to take in your marriage certificate along with the divorce decree. If you've never drawn any benefits off of someone's work record and they passed away, normally the death certificate will show the name of the surviving spouse. If it doesn't, or if it's in the case of a surviving divorced spouse, then you just take in your documentation. So Social Security does provide you with what you're eligible for. And the good news is when you file for benefits, say someone just walks in and applies for retirement, they ask a lot of questions. It seems like they're real nosy, but there's a purpose to that. They'll ask, are you currently married? And they'll ask about that marriage to see if you're eligible or they're eligible off of you. They'll also ask, did you have any prior marriages? And did that prior marriage either last 10 years or more, or did it end in the death of your former spouse? And if you answer yes to either one of those, they want information about that, again, to see, are you eligible? So Social Security, while technically it's everybody's responsibility to know what they're eligible for, and might want to keep track of that. Social Security will help them figure that out, because most people don't necessarily. They know they're eligible on their own, but they don't necessarily know if they're eligible on anybody else's work record.
Right. And it is overwhelming. Like, when you're retiring and if you're doing Social Security at the same time you're doing Medicare, I mean, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant, if you will. And it's just very overwhelming. And that's why I love sitting down with experts like you, so we can educate our audience and get some of these real, common questions answered. By the way, before we go on, if you are getting value so far out of this video, take a moment to please comment. Let us know if there's something we didn't answer by putting that in the comments below. Hit the like button for us. This just helps us get that information out to more people like yourself. And then subscribe. That way, every time we interview experts like Jim, you are notified, so you can get this, you can watch this content at your own leisure. So Jim, let me go on to the next question. The next question I had was, at what age is Social Security no longer taxed?
It's taxed. It can be taxed as long as you live. So if you live to be 100, they'll still tax you at age 100 if it fits within the parameters of taxation. So there's no point where you age out of the taxation. It's based off of your income. A single person, if their income's under 25,000, a married couple under 32,000, then your Social Security isn't taxable. If your modified adjusted gross income, Social Security calls it provisional income, is over those amounts, then either half of your Social Security or maybe up to 85% could be subject to federal income tax. And oddly enough, I think currently there's 9 states that also tax it. So you want to be aware to find out if your state taxes your Social Security benefits.
Okay. The next question I have is, what income counts towards my Social Security earnings limit?
Yeah, that's a good question, because if you're under your full retirement age, you file for Social Security benefits and you want to work, you could potentially lose some or all of your benefits. So in 2025, the amount you're allowed to earn before it affects your benefits up to the year before you reach your full retirement age is $23,400. If you go over that amount, Social Security will hold back $1 of benefits for every $2 you go over. Now, that's a little rough for people just starting out, because not everybody files for benefits at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So say somebody files in the middle of the year, they still look at your earnings January through December. And you probably worked up until the point you retired, and maybe you went well over that $23,400. So they have a provision. You can use it in 1 year. Most people use it in their first year retirement. Doesn't have to be, but most do. It's a monthly test. And so if you take $23,400 and divide it by 12, that's $1,950. So what Social Security says is, if you went over the $23,400, any month you earn $1,950 or less, doesn't matter, we'll pay you anyway. Keeps people from being penalized who worked maybe half of the year, 3/4 of the year before they retired. Now, the year you reach full retirement age, the amount you're allowed to earn goes way up. And it changes a little bit. It goes up to $62,160. And if you go over that, they'll hold back $1 of benefits for every 3 that you go over. And this only includes months before your full retirement age. So if someone reaches full retirement age in June and they want to draw benefits for the whole year and they're still working, Social Security would want to know, January through May, will you exceed the $62,160? And if you didn't, you could start your benefits in January, be reduced a little bit because you started it before full retirement age, but you're also getting benefits before that. So it can be worthwhile doing that if you're so inclined. So you want to be careful, and you don't want to go over and not let Social Security know, and then a year or 2 down the road, they send you a nice little letter that says, you're overpaid, we want our money back. So it's good to let them know while you're working what you think your earnings are going to be, but you can earn some before it affects your benefits.
So let me ask you this, because this has actually been something that's come across, my desk. multiple times this year about the provision. But how does someone let them know? Let's say somebody's working, do they make a phone call? Did they go to their SSA.gov account? Like what's the best way to let them know so you don't get that letter a couple of years down the road?
Right. Well, the good news is when you first file your application, they ask. So pick it up in the beginning. But if you're past that and maybe you retire, now you're a little bored and you go back to work, you can call them and they can take that information over the phone.
Okay. Second thing is the full retirement age. How does someone find that out? Do they log into their SSA.gov account and it's right there for them? Or what's the best way to find out that information?
It will tell them if you create your online account and look at your benefit statement, it tells you your full retirement age. Now, the easy one is if you were born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67 for everybody born in 1960 or later. Before that, it's a little trickier because it's 66 and some number of months, but it will tell you that on your Social Security benefit statement.
Right. And we talk a little bit more about that in detail in part 1, where Jim breaks that down even in more detail. Once again, that will be down. The link to that video will be down in the video description. So here's another one. It says here, will Social Security ever call me? That's a big question that I get all the time. Will Social Security ever call me?
Normally, the answer to that is no. Now, if you've just filed an application, say you create your online account and you file online, which you can do for a number of benefits, retirement, spouses, disability, that type of thing. If they have a question, they will call and they will say who they are, the office they're calling from, and keep in mind they have the application in front of them. So if somebody's asking you for bank information, credit card information, You don't give them that information. They also have a procedure in place that if Social Security calls you and you're not sure it's legitimate, ask for the person's name, the office they're calling from, and their phone number. You hang up, you call the National 800 number, and they will verify, yes, that person works for us, yes, that's a Social Security phone number, or no, it isn't. If you're not sure, that's your best bet. It takes a little bit of time, but, it's better than the alternative of giving some of these folks, because there are a lot of scams out there, and Social Security recognizes that. And in fact, they encourage people, if you get a phone call and you think it's a scam, contact Social Security and report it. They want to know about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the same thing with Medicare. Like I have clients that come by our office or, call me on the phone because we work in most states. And it's amazing to me, like just even the marketing pieces of mail that people are getting look like they're official from Medicare or from Social Security. And a lot of them, or maybe not a lot of them, some of them or many of them are tricked into calling, and then they give this information. Even when they're calling people now, Jim, like even on the Medicare side, they're basically telling them they're with, carrier XYZ. And it sounds so legitimate that they give that information out. So I'm glad that you give that warning. So are these officers or agents, are they working remotely? Are they working at one specific place? Because I'm assuming the number's probably going to be different if you get that phone call.
Yeah, it can be from somewhere other than your local Social Security office. Oftentimes it is from the local office, but just to give you an idea, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Sure. And when I applied for my Social Security, I did get a phone call, and it was from somebody in Kansas City, because that's a payment center, and they were helping the local offices work on those cases. So it was a legitimate call, and we got it all going, and I get my tiny little benefit because oddly enough, if you work at least you used to, if you worked at Social Security, you didn't pay into it. You do now, but when I started, you didn't. So, but it was, the person said who they were, and they mentioned they were from Kansas City, and I was confident enough. If they call you and they have questions about something, they're going to have a lot of information in front of them where you should be able to ask some questions and feel confident that this person is who they say they are.
Yeah, so that's really good points there, and thank you for bringing that up. Real quickly, as a side question, talking about what income counts towards Social Security earnings limit, and we talked about, a lot of my clients on the Medicare side get bored and they want to go back and work at Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart or whatever. What about investments? Because this person asked, like, they have investments, but they're bored, want to still go back to work. Does their investments count towards that Social Security earnings limit? And
No.
if so, how much of that?
Yeah. No, the investments don't.
Okay.
It's just earned income, which you go to work, someone pays you, you get a W-2, or if you're self-employed, it could be your net earnings. If you have a pension from another company, your draws from your savings, your 401ks, your IRAs. Heck, if you're lucky and you go down to the casino and win a boatload of money, none of that counts towards the earnings test. So congratulations on that if you do, but it won't affect your Social Security benefit. It's only if you go to work for someone, they pay you a salary that's called earned income. I think one of the easier ways to keep track of that is if you pay Social Security tax on it,
Right.
it'll count as earned income.
That's a great way to remember it. Yeah. If you pay Social Security tax on it, that's going to count towards your earning limits there. Let me ask you this. What are some other, I have some others, but what are some others? You're the expert. You've been doing this a long time. What are some things that questions, comments, feedback that you're hearing all the time in your industry that we need to address in our last few minutes here on the
And what I want people to remember is just because your neighbor did it a certain way doesn't mean that's the best way for you. We like people to maximize their benefit. Now, a lot of times people think that means waiting till age 70. And certainly that maximizes your benefit. But that's not in the cards for everybody.
Sure.
Waiting as long as possible to get a higher benefit so that increases your monthly benefit amount also has a direct effect on any survivor benefit someone might draw off of your work record. Waiting as long as possible is a good idea. You don't want to live in poverty just to get a higher Social Security check. And there are times when filing at 62 is the right thing to do. I like full retirement age. It seems like a good time to file. That's now past age 65. So that may mean that someone files for Medicare at 65, but doesn't file for benefits. You can do that. And then you file for your benefits later. But you want to look into it before you file. Do you have any children? A lot of people, not so many have minor children that are getting ready to file for retirement. Some do. But one I run into more often is maybe they have a disabled child. And this child was disabled before they were age 22. When the parent files for their own Social Security, the child can be eligible on their work record. And that may allow the child to get Medicare because after being on Social Security disability, whether it's on your own work record or your parents' work record, after 24 months, you're eligible for Medicare regardless of your age. And that can be a real important thing for folks to think about, with their disabled child. What are they doing medically wise? And maybe they're on Medicaid, which is good. But if you're on Medicaid and Medicare, that's even better. The states will pay the Medicare premium and you've got both coverages. So, just looking at your own situation is so important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And by the way, I know it's not like a broken record, but Jim dives a little bit deeper into that in the first part of this. And, go to the video link down in the video description where we talk and answer some more questions. It's about a 35-minute video, just like this one will be. And we definitely want to make sure you get those questions answered. So just click down on the link below in the video description. What else, Jim, as we wrap up today, what is something else that comes to mind that you feel like we just need to talk about in this particular sit down today?
Yeah, one of the, I kind of touched on it a little bit, the survivor benefit. How important is that in your estate planning? And if someone, the higher earner, takes their benefit at age 62, that's going to lower the survivor benefit. If they wait till 70, that's going to increase the survivor benefit. So keep that in mind, because and this was one of the saddest things that I ran into when I took claims. You would have a couple, benefits were fine. One of them passed away. You told the surviving spouse what the benefit's going to be, and they'd look at you and go, that's not enough money. because unfortunately, when somebody dies, doesn't mean your bills are cut in half, but you are losing some of that income. So you want to make sure that your surviving spouse is taken care of, at least money-wise, so that they don't have to worry about that. They have other things that's on their mind. But just keep that in mind when you're thinking about filing. If you can delay it a little bit, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, because if there is a couple of $100 difference, per month from taking it at 62 or going to your FRA for retirement age, that could make a big deal, because what if that surviving spouse winds up living for another 10, 15 years, right? That's really
right.
Sometimes, and I know, and you said this on the first video, a lot of people are taking it at 62 for financial reasons. They have to have it, so that we understand that. But if you can delay it and you can plan way ahead, it can be a better thing for the surviving spouse down the road.
Right. And when I tell people all the time, the worst thing you could do isn't terrible. Filing at 62 gets you the least amount of money, but it's not a terrible decision. It's still a lifetime benefit. You'll receive it the rest of your life. It's just at a lower amount. If you can delay it a little bit, your break-even point is well before we get to the average survival rate for someone in their 60s. So if you can wait, fine. But if you can't, that's fine too.
Right. And as we close today, I just want to revisit something that you touched on in the first video that we did together. And that is, because I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard it since the first video we put out, but even in the comments, people are fearful that Social Security is going away, that it's no longer going to exist, that it's not going to be there when they get there. Can you take just a few minutes here and address that again and talk a little bit about that?
Well, let's take the very worst case scenario. Congress does nothing. They make no changes to the program. Social Security is still fully funded until about 2034, 2035. That's not that far away. So it's still on people's minds. But worst case scenario, people are still going to be working. They're still going to be paying Social Security tax. Right. They'll still be bringing in enough money to cover about 80% of their obligation. Now, nobody wants a 20% pay cut. I think the last one we saw estimated 17% pay cut. Nobody wants that to happen. Right. I don't think I would ever vote for someone who gave me a 17 to 20% pay cut. So they will make the changes. Now, probably they'll raise the full retirement age, but to 70, if you're 55 or older, you probably don't even have to worry about that. Right. They're going to increase the amount of money that people pay Social Security tax on. I don't think they'll increase the percent, but if you're a higher earner, you won't stop paying the Social Security tax until you reach a higher level of earnings. And they feel that both of those two things, if they raise the cap to around $250,000 and the full retirement age to 70, they think that would take care of almost the entire deficit for the next 75 years. So I know the current administration coming in said, we're not raising the full retirement age to 70. I don't think in the next 4 years we'll see any changes anyway. So it's probably the president after that. But I think I'm pretty sure it'll go to 70.
Yeah, and I wanted to address it again just because it just seems like, rumor gets started, or it's like everybody jumps on the fear train and just really starts freaking out. And you're listening to an expert who's been doing this a really, really long time. And we're here to provide you information, facts, real information, so that way you can plan and get the most out of your Social Security. Well, Jim, thank you for jumping on with me today. I know you're a very busy guy and you were generous with your time once again. Any final thoughts before we close today?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, Rob, having me on, because I do like talking about Social Security. That's what I know, so that's what I like to talk about. I want people not to be concerned about the solvency. Right. We were there before. Congress and the president in the early 80s made the changes needed to be made. I think they'll be made again. I want people to think about their Social Security, get that benefit statement, look at what they think their benefits are going to be, and make their plans accordingly. Because when you get into retirement, if you have enough money to live on, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And all the links and things that Jim talked about today will be down in the video description. So we'll put the ssa.gov link down there and some other links for you to go and get the information that you need. And once again, I want to encourage you to go back and watch the first video. That will be down in the video description as well. If there's something we didn't address in this, Jim may be so generous down the road to come back and do a part 3. But if there's something that we did not address today that you have questions, please put that in the comments below. And if you're retiring and you're brand new to Medicare, this is where I come in. And what I would love for you to do is go take a look at my 3-part Medicare 101 series here. And God bless you guys, and we'll see you on the next video.